This is how you make easy and delicious banana bread. Hi, my name is Jeevan and today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make a very simple banana bread. So like I always say in all my videos, we want to make sure our hair is tied up, we're wearing appropriate clothing, whether it's just our regular clothing and we roll up sleeves, and just make sure no fabric is going into our cooking and baking. And then we also want to make sure our oven is getting preheated. So I already set my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what we'll be using for this recipe. And then we also want to make sure we have all our ingredients. Before we get started on making our banana bread, we want to get our pan greased. So I'm using an 8x4 baking pan. It's a loaf pan. And then I'm just going to grease it with cooking oil spray. So this one is just canola oil. And you're just going to spray this, lightly spray your pan all over, and make sure you're getting it in these crevices too, so your cake is not sticking, because that's usually where your loaf is going to stick the most. So after you're done greasing your pan, it should look something like this, just making sure it's around everywhere that your loaf batter might be touching. And then you can just set that aside. You can also grease your pan with margarine or butter, and you can also put parchment paper on it, so you can just lay it across this way, and that will just make it easier to transport your loaf out of your pan. So now starting on our actual batter, you're going to start off with 3 bananas. You want to make sure your bananas are very ripe, because the more ripe they are, that means they have a better sugar content. So they're just going to make your loaf sweeter. These ones are very ripe and brown, so they're perfect for this recipe. And you're just going to add those to your bowl. Now that you put all 3 of your bananas into your bowl, you're going to start mashing them. You can mash your bananas with a fork, like how I'm doing right now, or you can mash them with a potato masher. Those work really well as well. But this is just easier and handy because everyone usually has forks around. And you're just going to mash them up, and then we can move on to our next step. Now that your bananas are mashed, they should look kind of like that. They should have a thinner consistency with a little bit of lumps, because that's totally fine. And then we're going to add 1/3 a cup of melted butter to your mashed bananas. And now you can continue to mix with a fork, but I like to use a wooden spoon just because I think it's easier because it has a longer handle. So I'm just going to scrape everything off of this fork and move on to using the wooden spoon. And we're just going to mix this quickly until it's all incorporated. Perfect. So I've added a teaspoon of vanilla and 1 egg, and I'm just going to quickly mix that all up. And I'm also going to add 3/4 cup of granulated sugar. This is just the regular white sugar. And it should start to look like this. It's still going to be really wet because we haven't added any of our dry ingredients. So this is just the wet batter right now. So I'm adding a teaspoon of baking soda now and a pinch of salt. For the pinch of salt, you can really just eyeball it. It should just be a pinch. But if you're using unsalted butter like I am, you can do a bit more of a heftier pinch. So just like a bigger pinch. But if you used salted butter, then just do a regular pinch. So now we put all those ingredients into this bowl, and it should be looking like this. It should be a really wet and thin consistency with little bits of chunks of banana in them. So we can just put that to the side and now get our flour that we're going to add to this. So now that we have our flour, we are just going to use regular original all-purpose flour. You can get this from any grocery store. And I like to do half a cup at a time. So we're adding a total of 1.5 cups of flour. So I like to do that in increments of 3, and I like to do 3 half cups at a time. So now I'm on to the last half a cup of flour. So my batter looks like this right now with just a cup of flour. And when you're adding it, if you're mixing with a wooden spoon like I am, you can use a spatula, big or small, doesn't really matter, and just keep scraping down the sides as you're mixing. But you could also use a fork for the step and just do the same thing. You could also use a regular spatula. Now that this is almost coming all together and the batter's almost done, you can add some walnuts to it, you can add chocolate chips. I used to really like adding sweet chocolate chips to this batter, and it makes it taste really good. I'm just gonna leave it plain today, but feel free, now that the batter is made, you can just fold in with a spatula any additions that you want to add in. And now we can just transfer this batter into a pan. Your batter should look like this. It should be thick but not too thick where it can't fall off your wooden spoon nicely. So I just got my pan here and we've already greased it, so I don't have to worry about that. And I'm just going to take my spatula and take all the batter off of the wooden spoon. And then I'm going to take the spatula and use it instead of the wooden spoon to transfer the batter into the pan. And when you do this, you want to just make sure that none's getting on these edges of the pan, because if you put the batter into the oven and you're going to bake the loaf, and those edges have batter all on them, no matter if it's thick or thin, like splotches of batter, it's gonna burn, and then it's not gonna be a very good smell for your kitchen, and it's also just gonna make your pan a lot harder to clean after. So now I put it in, and I'm just gonna spread it all out so it's evenly distributed into my pan. And at this point, you can add anything on top. For example, I'm going to add some cinnamon and swirl it on top, which I'll show you in a minute. But you can also add your toppings that you added into it, just sprinkling it on top or something like that. Now that my pan is filled with the batter and it's evenly throughout it, and it's pretty flat too, that's how you want it to look, I'm going to add some cinnamon on the top. This is totally optional. This is just personal preference, but I'm just gonna take half a teaspoon right now, and I'm just gonna sprinkle that on top. It does not have to be perfect, or it does not have to be really that even. As you can see, mine's not too even. But then this is the fun part. You're gonna take a fork and you're just gonna swirl it through your batter. This makes a pretty design, and it also makes sure it's evenly on top of your loaf. So I'm just swirling back and forth, horizontal, and then I'm going to do the other way too. And at this point, you can add more, or you can swirl it more or less. It's really up to you and how you like, based on how much cinnamon you like and how you want it to look. But that's how mine looks. And now I can just put in the oven. So this is going into my oven that is already preheated, and you want to make sure it's going towards the back because that is where the most heat is. And this is going in for 50 to 60 minutes. So my loaf is done. It looks great and it smells even better. My whole house smells amazing. And your loaf should look like this. It should have a dark to medium color brown on the top of your loaf along with the sides. And it should have this opening that it cracks open while it bakes, like every good loaf should have. And you also want to make sure it's cooked all the way through. So at the 50-minute mark, I checked with a toothpick and I just put it in, and I could still see a little bit of sticking to the toothpick of batter. So I just added it 5 more minutes in the oven, and I checked it with a toothpick after 5 minutes, and it was perfect. No batter or loaf was sticked onto my toothpick, so I knew it was time to take it out. So now it's been cooling for 10 minutes, and I'm just going to take it out of the pan and put it onto my cutting board. Now I transferred it onto my cutting board. I have let it cool. It's pretty cool. It's a little still warm, but I'm just going to cut it in half to show you guys how the middle should look. It should be really easy to cut, especially with a bread knife like this. And then still steamy, but that's how it should look inside. So now that the loaf is done, you can cut into it and enjoy. Make sure you reseal this in a container or a plastic bag, and it can last up to a week and a half if it is properly sealed in a bag, and you can even put it in the fridge if you want. And once you have cut it, you can serve it with anything like tea or butter. And that's it. Thank you for watching.